Across India, two worlds are colliding. Every year, scores of people are killed by leopards. And hundreds of these big cats are stoned, trapped, or shot. I grew up in India, and I've devoted my life to conserving its wild creatures. What interests me is the story behind the headlines. What is it really like, living with these animals on your doorstep? And how does one of the world's top predators survive in a country of over 1 billion people? South India has been my home for 50 years. I'd always felt safe here, at least from wild animals. I'll never forget when that changed. The day we suspected something went wrong is when our dog disappeared. We actually made a complaint to the police saying that our dog's been stolen and put in a reward for his recovery. A few days after Cuddy disappeared, our neighbors were looking up on the hill and saw an animal up there, which they actually thought was Cuddy, and called him. But whatever it was, it turned around and slunk off into the forest. Soon after that, I hired a couple of trackers. The first thing they actually found was the dog's hair on the top of the fence. And I said, well, obviously, he's jumped over, gone to the road, gotten stolen. I mean, it all sort of added up. But they kept finding bits of hair and eventually found Cuddy's remains. Our magnificent German Shepherd, the most beautiful dog we'd ever owned, had been reduced to skin and bones. I had my suspicions about what had done it. As a precaution, I started locking up the dogs at night. Then, after 9 months, the killer returned. I turned around to go back into the house, and suddenly I heard this blood-curdling sound. I immediately whipped around. There was a leopard on top of Coco right there. Grabbed Coco by the throat, and it was raking her body with its claws. The leopard looked up, saw me coming. I turned around to see where Janaki was. I looked back. The leopard was gone. There was no doubt about it. We were living with a leopard. Leopards are notoriously secretive animals. They often go unnoticed, despite being more widespread and more abundant than any other cats. Pound for pound, they're extremely powerful. Whether fighting or hunting, it's their sharp claws and dagger-like canines that do the damage. What sets them apart, though, is their sheer opportunism. They'll eat almost anything, from an insect to a buffalo. And this natural versatility enables them to exploit our world, as my dog had just learned to its cost. The near-fatal attack on Coco had been so quick, I'd barely glimpsed the leopard. It took me months to get a picture of it on my camera trap. When I eventually succeeded, I could hardly believe the size of the animal. I started looking into the severity and frequency of leopard attacks on people. And the more you look, the crazier it gets. It seems that run-ins with these big cats are happening more often. Fatal encounters are being reported from all over the country. In fields, villages, and even cities. In fact, leopards now kill far more people than tigers. Is it because we're encroaching too much into their habitat? Or are there different factors at play? Why is it that some leopards prefer to avoid us, while others become man-eaters? I'm heading first to Rajasthan. The place I'm going to is a long way from any national park, yet it's said to be one of the best spots in India to see wild leopards. Even in rural backwaters, India is developing at a staggering pace. When you realize that less than 5% of the country is set aside for wildlife, it's remarkable how many large animals are still around. Leopards have fared much better than tigers, in part because they are more adaptable. Around half of them, 7,000 perhaps, are thought to live outside national parks, in more or less close contact with humans.
I'm here in northwest India, in Rajasthan. I've come here because it's a very similar situation to where we live. There are a lot of hillocks around here, surrounded by agriculture, people living everywhere, and leopards.
No one knows these leopards better than local naturalist Davy Singh.
I've been coming here every day, morning and evening. If I see a leopard, I get a high.
Yeah.
It's like having a peg of scotch on the rocks.
For nearly 10 years, Davy has been following one particular leopard.
Zara, her family, they have never disappointed me. Once I see them, I'm very happy.
What does your wife think about you spending all this time here?
My wife knows my passion, that I'm mad over leopards and I can't do without seeing leopards every day.
It's rare to see a leopard so clearly under any circumstances. What's surprising, though, is how many of these cats seem to be hanging out here on this one hill.
That split rock you see,
Yeah.
that head very much looks like Zara's head.
One by one, more leopards come out to relax.
The standard line is that these are very solitary creatures. Can you tell me how many leopards you've seen in one place?
I've seen 6 here,
Together?
together.
All hanging out together?
All hanging out together.
It's great. It's like a pride of lions.
It is.
Perhaps leopards are more sociable than we've been led to believe. It's fascinating to see an entire family relaxing so openly, so close to human activity. For local guys like Magaram, the presence of leopards creates an obvious problem.
इधर ही रात को अंदर में डाल के लॉक लगाते हैं, फिर इधर सूते आ जाता है, डेली आ जाता है। ऐसे दबिया उस पहाड़ से आता है, इधर होके तो इधर होके इधर होके इधर होके इधर आता है तो फिर वापस इधर घुस जाता है। ये बग्गी बचाने के लिए रोड को कभी खुला रह जाता है, तो अंदर बीसने के लिए करता है। फिर पकड़ के वो बाहर ले जाता है। तो तब ऐसे वो भाग के वापस जाता है। जंगल को रात को कहाँ जाते हैं आगे, सुबह ले जानी पड़ती है उसको।
What's crazy to me is that people like Magaram seem more worried about their cows and goats than their own safety.
आपको कुछ डर था आपके लिए? क्या आदमी के लिए हमला करता नहीं तो बच्चे के लिए?
आदमी को कुछ नहीं करता, बकरे को तो लेके जाता है।
When I asked him about humans, he says it hasn't happened, he hasn't heard of it, and he's not worried about it.
For centuries, this is probably how it's been with leopards across most of India. A constant tussle over livestock, but few attacks on people. Leopards are much more active after dark. With 2 large cubs to feed, there's a good chance that Zara will sneak down off the hill in search of a meal. Livestock isn't always available, but leopards are adept at surviving on small game like hares. After a couple of hours, Zara appears without warning. She's surprisingly close. I try to read her body language. She doesn't appear to be stalking us, yet I know perfectly well what a leopard can do to a person if it chooses.
What bothers me, and the big question is, what makes a leopard turn bad? Why do some leopards become man-eaters?
The leopards in this area are very, very friendly. In fact, when a person steps down from a jeep, they won't come towards you. The moment they hear your footsteps, they tend to run away into the bush. In our area, we've never had a man-eater.
For leopards, humans would be such easy prey. Considering how soft and puny we are, it is remarkable that most of them stick to eating livestock. It seems to me that in India, an ancient and balanced relationship exists between humans and leopards. And that to upset this relationship, something definite has to change. To find out why things go wrong, I leave Rajasthan and head north to the state of Uttarakhand. When it comes to man-eaters, this place is in a league of its own. The foothills of the Himalayas are truly spectacular, but I'm not here to enjoy the scenery. 10 days ago, in a remote settlement, a 5-year-old boy was killed. The latest victim in a region long infamous for its deadly cats. This one state has by far the highest concentration of leopard attacks in India. About 70 people are taken every year. It was in these very valleys, nearly 100 years ago, that pilgrims on their way to the holy shrines at the source of the Ganges were also stalked by leopards. Between 1918 and 1926, one of these leopards, the man-eater of Rudraprayag, is said to have killed 125 people. Its reign of terror was finally ended by a hunter called Jim Corbett. Why these particular hills should be so cursed is a mystery. But the numbers are pretty sobering.
आयत का जो क्षेत्रफल होता है उसको जिसको मैं पूछूंगा वही बोलेगा है.
When local maths teacher Lakpat Singh Rawat lost his 9th pupil to a leopard, he finally snapped and applied for a special permit to hunt the culprit.
अब दोनों को गुणा कर देंगे तो आयत का क्षेत्रफल 5 ठीक है.
By the time he got the go-ahead, 3 more of his students had been eaten. It took him several nights to get a clear shot. And in the 10 years since that first kill, he's taken out a further 39 man-eaters. In fact, he's now the go-to man whenever there's a problem. And he appears to be keeping himself busy.
ये वाला मैनीटर है. इस मैनीटर को हमने देवप्रयाग के ऊपर मारा था. फीमेल है. इसके द्वारा एक महिला एक 10 साल के बच्चे को किल कर दिया गया था. ये वाला है. दादी की गोद से बच्चा उठा के ले गया था. ये वाला लेपर्ड है. अच्छा. 2 बड़ी महिलाओं को मार दिया. 40 साल से ऊपर वाली महिलाओं को. ये 62 केजी का.
62 kg.
8 फीट 2 इंच लंबा है. और उसमें इससे 16 साल की लड़की है. अपने चाचा के घर में पिक्चर देखने गई थी. वहां से पिक्चर देख के आ रही थी तो रास्ते में इसको लेपर्ड ने पकड़ लिया. उसने बार बार इसके ग्रिप को पकड़ के गर्दन सर अलग हो गया तो उसको छुपा देता है. तो छुपाया तो जब मेरे पत्तियों से ढक देता है और बिल्कुल कोई नहीं गए. उसको ये रहा कि ये अभी तक किसी ने देखा ही नहीं है. उसके बाद जो ये रात को 8:10 में स्किल पे पहुंचा तो ये दिखाई दे रहा था और तुरंत शूट होते ही इसके सर हिट हो गया था. सीधे सर हिट हो गया था. वहीं पे गिर गया था ये. आंखें हैं क्योंकि हमने इसके जो फोटो.
An almost unbearable number of the victims in these stories are children.
पूरे गले पे है. सारे एकदम पूरा गला ही फाड़ दिया.
There's several extremely disturbing pictures of some of the victims, and just out of respect for the families, we would never show this to you. But it's pretty obvious that the leopard has grabbed this particular victim by the throat and dragged the child through the forest. These are all things that are extremely difficult to look at.
What's so puzzling and so upsetting is why there are so many attacks here. In Rajasthan, there were none.
ये मैनेजर कैसा कंडीशन कैसा है? हेल्थी है कि नहीं तो दांत ऐसा फूट गया?
आजकल तो पहले तो ऐसा होता था कि लगभग जो भी मैनीटर बनते थे वो मतलब एक प्रकार से अपंग होते थे. इतने ज्यादा वो नहीं है. 80% जो है वो सही हेल्थ वाले होते हैं.
अच्छा. फिर क्यों मैनीटर हो जाता है?
हाँ, भूख और उसके भूख के कारण. और मेन तो भूख है. हाँ, लोग जो है जो शिकारी हैं वो कुछ मार लेते हैं उनके खाने को. इसलिए भी बहुत टफ है. इसमें ऐसा है कि जो फीमेल होती है वो अधिकतर मैनीटर वही होती है क्योंकि उसको अपने बच्चों के लिए दूध के लिए वो करना पड़ता है. फीमेल ज़्यादा जिम्मेदार होती है. इसलिए मतलब 75% फीमेल ही मैनीटर होती है.
अच्छा.
Is there now just too little left in these hills for leopards to hunt? I can imagine how a hungry leopard might be drawn to a village in search of a meal. But does this explain why so many humans are being attacked? I'd expect them to come looking for cows and goats, not people. To learn more about the circumstances of the latest attack, I'm in the town of Gaucha. It was here that the 5-year-old boy was grabbed 10 days ago, and his relatives have agreed to talk.
6 बजे पता नहीं चला ना कि बच्चा कहाँ गया, इधर आया उधर गया। उन्होंने सोचा कि मम्मी के पास चले गया, वो उधर को चले गया। अरे परिवार वाले चिल्लाए, इसको देखा, इधर देखा उधर देखा, कहीं नहीं मिला बच्चा। इधर गए सारे, फिर सारे गांव में वो हो गया, हल्ला हो गया, तो सारे लोग इकट्ठा हो गए।
अब पूरे गांव वाले आए, गांव वालों ने ढूंढा, पुलिस वाले आए, ढूंढा, सबने ढूंढा।
कुत्ता है तो उसको कुछ चलाया नहीं, कुछ किसी को एक साउंड नहीं मिला।
नहीं तो
It was only the next morning that the boy was finally found.
एक चप्पल वहाँ पे मिला, एक चप्पल यहाँ पे मिला। हाँ, पंजाब बाग का इसमें राख के ऊपर था। यहाँ पे कौवे घूमने लगे। सर मिला, एक पाँव मिला, एक हाथ मिला। बाकी और कुछ नहीं।
भाग क्या दूसरा कुछ ढूंढने के लिए आया था, गाय ने तो कुत्ता।
अब क्या बताओ, मतलब किसी को जानवर को ढूंढ रहा है या मतलब उसको, मतलब आदमी को ढूंढने के लिए सुना है, क्या पता लगता है उसको।
Perhaps for a leopard, there's just no difference between a goat and a human. There is, however, another possible explanation for the tragic situation that exists here. Poaching to supply body parts and skins to Southeast Asia is happening on a massive scale. And this may be more relevant than we realize. New research on mountain lions in America shows that when big cats are hunted intensively, it can actually increase conflict. Shoot a resident adult, and several younger animals tend to move in. Being less experienced in the ways of people, these feline teenagers are much more liable to cause trouble. A leopard that's killed once may be more likely to return. Leopards certainly thinks so.
सबसे पहले छोटा बच्चा मारेगा, उसके बाद वो फीमेल पे जाएगा, उसके बाद जब मेल फीमेल किसी फीमेल को मारेगा, उसके बाद तभी मेल मारेगा। और ज़्यादा चालाक होता जाएगा। तो उसका अपना आप ही चेंज हो जाता है कि जो सामान्य लेपर्ड होगा वो आदमी को देख के फिर निकल जाएगा, परंतु जो मैनिटर होगा वो मैनिटर आपको देख के होगा तो वो बिल्कुल आपके बिल्कुल बगल पे ही लेट जाएगा, तब कि वो अटैक कर सके। और
डर नहीं है?
नहीं, डर है इंसान के प्रति, वो मैनिटर में समाप्त हो जाता है।
It seems obvious that the man-eating leopard of Goucher has to be shot before it strikes again. Yet as I set out with Lakpat to track the leopard that ate the boy, there's a nagging question at the back of my mind. How is it possible to identify the real culprit?
She heard a rock falling down and she saw a tail disappearing, a dog barking hysterically.
Shooting the wrong cat won't just fail to solve the problem. There's a good chance it'll make it worse. At the edge of the village, the boy's uncle points us toward fresh leopard tracks, close to where his nephew was killed. Lakpat claims that man-eaters only hunt between 6 and 8, because that's when children are about. In his eyes, any leopard that shows up during these hours is fair game.
That's the house, the one with the light on, where the boy was taken.
Beyond the village, the track climbs steeply. There are likely to be several leopards using this area, all known to each other.
This is where the leopard scratched. The problem is always trying to identify which is the responsible animal. Are they killing the right one?
There's some more tracks. Look at this. And that's it. Like in back leg from using the hind legs.
No clear paw prints are left at the scene of the attack. And in any case, it's almost impossible to identify an individual leopard from its tracks. By 8:30, we still haven't found a leopard, and Lakpat calls time. The Gaucho man-eater is still out here, and I'm left in two minds. I can understand people's fear and their desire for justice. But in the wider scheme of things, I wonder if all this shooting is just creating more man-eaters and more misery. I leave Uttarakhand with more questions than I came with. 600 miles south, in the state of Maharashtra, science is finally starting to give us some much-needed answers. There's no jungle here at all. For mile upon mile, it's just villages and fields. But the sugarcane provides perfect cover. And for an ambush hunter with broad tastes, there's plenty to eat. In its own way, this densely settled farmland is a leopard's paradise.
Everybody thinks the leopards have to be in the jungle. They can't be anywhere else. But nobody's told that to the leopards.
I've come here to meet Dr. Vidya Atreya, the only person who's really studied leopards in a purely human landscape.
ही जेव्हा लहान होती तिची आई ती गावठी नव्हती ना.
It's her detective work that solved a crucial piece of the man-eating puzzle. The trouble began several years ago, when everyone decided that the leopards here belonged in the jungle and had to be sent back.
The leopards were trapped from the sugarcane areas and released in the forests. 106 leopards were captured in 3 years. Within a week or so of those releases, attacks on people started happening. The whole year before that, there were no attacks. And then there was the steep spike. We had 25 attacks. The leopards were going into houses, picking up children and dragging them away. In the whole of India, only the state of Uttarakhand was worse.
What's difficult to understand is why should just taking a leopard from one place and putting it in another place cause all these problems? What effect would translocation have on a leopard?
It seems that the actual act of capturing the animal leads to stress. People are around it, it gets injured.
Every leopard captured here suffered a terrible ordeal. Highly stressed, the animals were taken up to 150 miles away and literally dumped.
You take such an animal, when you go put it in some forest, it's never seen a forest in its life. They don't know anything about that.
So they're screwed up.
Many of these release sites, they have their own leopards. It is a hostile environment. Rob, it's like picking you up and dropping you maybe into Baghdad. It just leads to a much more stressed out leopard in a place it doesn't know, and they're hungry. And the most common thing for them to find in India is humans. I think that to a very large extent, man-eaters are man-made.
This simple idea that messing with leopards is what turns them bad is a fascinating thought. But I haven't forgotten about my leopard back home and what it's capable of.
The presence of a predatory animal means that problems could happen.
The risk is never zero, but if you just let them be, then the problems are actually very, very little.
Well, some people would make the argument if there's even a slight risk, then why not just wipe them all out?
It's not possible to wipe them all out. When you start killing the animals, that vacant territory is immediately filled up. Other animals from up to 100, 200 kilometers away come and stay in that area.
Whether we like it or not, leopards tend to disperse out of forests.
We don't have a choice. The leopards are going to be living near humans, and when you start killing them, the problem escalates.
The attempt to rid these farmlands of leopards proved a tragic mistake for all. As well as leading to 18 human deaths, it also created dozens of orphaned and traumatized animals.
So how many leopards are here now?
At the moment, we have 26 leopards that are not releasable. Once they grow big, then they just don't know their own strength.
Sure.
Karthik Satyanarayan is co-founder of Wildlife SOS, an outfit that cares for convicted man-eaters.
Trapping is a big problem because the minute the leopard is caught, he's just going to go attack that trap cage like mad to try and get away. And that's a huge problem because the trap cage is metal. Sure. And, you know, he just breaks all his teeth, injures himself, and just makes a complete mess of that leopard. They're irreparably damaged.
Who's this?
This is Arjun. Sadly, he's a confirmed man-eater, and you can't stand in front of him for more than a couple of minutes before he displays all his fangs. He still, I think, hates people, and of course, he's handsome as hell. Animals like this certainly can't be released.
So what's this guy's story?
This is Shiva. He's been here about 8 years now. He would have probably been trapped in a very difficult situation, stoned, probably mobbed, partly lynched, then got into a cage and lived in a cage, which is the size of a dining table, for maybe 3 or 4 years before we got him into this. He doesn't want to have anything more to do with human beings. Unfortunately, I think there is going to be some collateral damage when people clash with wildlife, and that will result in places like this, lifetime care centers where you have to keep animals that can't be released. We don't want centers like this in the future. I think there's got to be a lot of emphasis on getting people to become more tolerant.
Across large areas of Maharashtra, people are quietly adapting to the presence of big cats.
What's up?
Practically everyone I meet here has a leopard story. Yet they don't seem to be living in fear. As you'd expect, the locals are pretty clued in. Kids don't wander around after dark. And many people fit their pet dogs with special protection.
That's a wicked-looking collar you got there. Now, just look at the spikes on this thing. Man, I can just imagine a leopard trying to grab it, either the top or the bottom, is going to have one very, very sore mouth. Watch out for leopards. I mean, despite your collar, you got to be careful.
At times, the local attitude toward leopards goes way beyond mere tolerance. They actually rescue cats that land in trouble. Deep agricultural wells are one of the biggest pitfalls around here. Leopards often fall into them while chasing dogs, and fishing them out can take a lot of time and trouble. After an all clear from the vet, it'll be set free in its own territory. It's what works best for both villagers and leopards alike. There are over 500 people per square mile here, and a density of leopards comparable to a national park. So how do these cats adapt to living alongside so many of us? When Vidya tells me there's a fresh kill right next to a village, I'm eager to stake it out. There's a chance I'll be able to see how a leopard reacts to the presence of people. It's pitch black, but our thermal camera reveals every detail in the darkness.
Right now the dogs are going at it.
I'd be interested to see when the dogs actually leave. They might want to get the heck out of here.
Leopards are not the only large carnivores thriving in this landscape. A hyena cruises in along the main road. Maybe it's got wind of the carcass, but it gives it a wide berth. Moments later, a leopard emerges to claim its meal.
Oh my God.
These sugarcane leopards are real heavyweights, larger even than many of their African cousins.
He's tucking right in. I'm sure he can hear us. He's gone away from the carcass, now he's lying down. He's totally relaxed. He might even be asleep. There's that footpath behind. There are two people walking on it. He's got up.
Very close to the
But
people.
he's very close to them. Oh my God. They're so close, you know how it could be at least 20
I'm
feet.
sure those people don't know that the leopard is just
They
behind them.
don't. They don't. They're walking right by.
Is he looking at them or what?
I can't tell. He's certainly faced in that direction. Here, have a look.
He's coming back to the
He's coming
group.
back?
Yeah, yeah.
This leopard is clearly very used to people. Having watched the pedestrians pass, he simply continues with his meal.
God, this is quite a revelation to me. I tell you, I've just never seen anything like it.
Watching all this makes me a lot more relaxed about leopards. And with Vidya close behind, I decide to take the experiment a step further. The big cat immediately comes to check us out. Once it's gone back to its meal, I creep slowly toward it, armed only with my night scope.
As long as I'm watching him, I feel very cool with him. As soon as I look away, I'm not really quite sure where he is, and I don't want to turn my back on him.
motorbike just went by behind him. He didn't even look up. He's hardly 40 feet away. Doesn't seem to be worried about me at all. I'm in full view of him. He's still feasting. God. This is a very, very different kind of leopard here. Amazing.
These farmland leopards know how to blend in. Yet there may be an even more jaw-dropping example of coexistence. For years, I've been hearing almost unbelievable stories about leopards in cities. Heaving with over 20 million people, it's the last place you'd expect to find big cats. Mumbai is India's biggest city and the 4th largest metropolis in the world. Incredibly, it also has the highest density of wild leopards anywhere on Earth. This urban jungle is the ultimate test of their adaptability.
This is the northernmost tip of Bombay Island. The north of here is a quite densely forested area, and it's perfect leopard habitat. And if they're going to come from anywhere, I would think it would be there. It was the late 70s when I started hearing stories about leopards in the city. Leopards taking dogs, taking goats. It was much later when we actually heard of people being killed by leopards here.
Mumbai's leopards live mostly within Sanjay Gandhi National Park, a stretch of forest that's now been engulfed by concrete suburbs and crowded slums. It's around the outskirts of the park, along roads, and among dwellings that people are most likely to encounter a leopard. For the most part, the cats are looking for their usual takeaway. A slum dog a week is enough to keep a leopard well fed. With over 150,000 strays walking around the streets, the city offers rich pickings. The surest way to deter leopards would be to clean up the garbage that attracts the dogs. But maybe this isn't necessary. I'm curious to find out if the city dwellers are as relaxed about leopards on their doorsteps as people in the countryside. Equipped with a torch and a night scope, I head into a kind of buffer zone near the southern boundary of the park. A lot of people live in this area, and they're never far from a leopard.
नमस्ते। कुछ वहाँ का खबर है? बैठ के आया? अच्छा, कितने बजे?
रात से आके ना, बाथरूम में जाते ना, मादी है।
हाँ।
हमारे दो कुत्ते हैं ना,
हाँ।
वो उसके लिए।
Says that 4 leopards came by last night. First one, and then a female with 2 cubs. And they were hanging out just a few feet in front of the door. He says, we're not frightened of them. They're not going to hurt us, but they definitely would come for the dogs. इधर बहुत लोग बाहर सोते रात में, तो इसके लिए सब बाहर ही सोता जाता है। तो it gets pretty hot and stuffy inside, so he sleeps outside every night, and a lot of other people do too. नजदीक आता नहीं है, वहाँ से मत चला जाए। People seem to be fairly laid back about leopards. They invariably have their children sleeping between the adults. The dogs are very important to them because they tell them when the leopards are around. If they do hear the dogs, they'll quickly call the kids inside.
No one here is complacent. They do take precautions.
The fact is, people have been attacked and killed right here. But there's no great furor to shoot the leopard. Wow, the dogs are really going nuts down there right now. They're a bit hysterical. There's obviously a leopard close by. Fresh pug marks, very fresh. Just look at the edge of the tracks there. Just made a couple of minutes ago.
After just 3 hours of searching, I spot my first urban leopard.
She's lying in some fairly thick grass, so it's not very easy to see her. But she's very calm. She's staring at us, hardly 40 or 50 feet away.
This city leopard looks as relaxed and confident as any I've seen. She's in her own neighborhood, in a world she knows, which makes her a much safer animal. Jungle leopards eat anything from buffaloes down to termites. In cities, the menu shifts to rats, dogs, rotting carcasses, and even hospital waste.
She's going in the other direction. She disappeared into the bushes.
I can't imagine Londoners or New Yorkers being so cool about leopards on their streets. As millions sleep, there are leopards here, going about their business. They're watching the world go by and hanging out on park benches. But so long as we're not hassling them, it just doesn't seem to be a big deal.
particularly interesting about Maharashtra, this state, is that the results of translocation have been an increase in conflict, more people getting killed. So the authorities are reluctant to do any translocation, despite the fact that some human fatalities have taken place. Increasing vigilance and doing their patrolling, and of course warning people and getting people to learn to live with animals like this could make a difference. It may be working. It's just incredible to me that a large predator like a leopard can live amongst people, and in most cases without any big problems.
For centuries, these amazing cats have found ways to exploit our world. Whether we like it or not, I've seen that their versatility means they're here to stay. Though living with leopards is never risk-free, it's only when we mess with them that they seem to bite back. The other half of the story is the remarkable willingness of ordinary people to live alongside these big cats. And for me, there's a big lesson here. The future of animals like leopards doesn't just depend on finding space in a crowded world. Whether it's in my own backyard or anywhere else, it also depends on people's capacity for tolerance.